There is a weight you carry that no one else can see. It settles in your chest before the alarm even goes off. Before the day begins, the battle is already raging inside your skull. The same accusations, the same doubts. You're not moving fast enough. You're letting everyone down. You're fundamentally flawed. We learn to smile through it, to call it stress, to blame it on a bad night's sleep. But the truth is far less comfortable. Most human beings aren't truly living. They are simply reacting to the whip of fear, suffocating under the blanket of anxiety, and burning in the fire of an anger they don't understand. You've been taught to treat these feelings like enemies, to lock them in a cage and pretend they don't exist. But what if that strategy is the very thing that's breaking you? What if everything you were told about mastering your inner world is upside down? The ancient Stoics didn't believe in escaping emotion. They believed in meeting it with such fierce clarity that its illusion shatters. They taught that we stop mistaking the weather of the mind for the mind itself. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ran an empire while armies tried to tear it apart, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Yet here we are, spending our days trying to micromanage the external world, while our internal world rots in neglect. This session isn't here to hold your hand. It's here to light a fire under the part of you that surrendered, because until you face the thing that's been pulling your strings, you will never be free. If you're ready to stop being a puppet of circumstance and start living with deliberate intention, hit that subscribe button for Stoic Mindset Mastery. The version of you that refuses to be ruled by chaos is waiting to be born. Let's begin. Fear rarely arrives with a bang. It's far more insidious than that. It doesn't roar, it hums, a low, constant frequency in the background of your consciousness. It disguises itself as practicality, as caution, as just thinking things through. But make no mistake, it is building a home inside your decision-making process. It shapes what you say and, more importantly, what you swallow. It tells you that silence is the safer currency than speaking your truth, that waiting is the wiser course than daring, that it's better to avoid the possibility of failure than to risk the attempt. So you don't make the call that could change everything. You don't have the conversation that's been suffocating you. You don't take the first step because the staircase is dark. You hesitate, and in that hesitation, opportunities dissolve, connections fray, and dreams are buried under the dust of maybe later. Fear whispers that it's your protector, shielding you from pain, from embarrassment, from the sting of disappointment. But it's lying. It's not protecting you from pain. It's protecting you from becoming who you're meant to be. Over time, you stop needing a reason to say no. It becomes your default setting, your auto response. You start calling it your personality. I'm just cautious. I'm a realist. But that's not who you are. That's who fear has trained you to be. A highly trained, well-behaved prisoner. The tragedy is that most people don't wake up to this until the years have piled up like heavy stones, until regret has replaced hope. They look back and wonder how their life got so small, so repetitive, so achingly safe. Fear is a master of disguise. It never calls itself fear. It says, "You're just not ready yet." It says, "Let's wait for the perfect moment." But the perfect moment is a myth fear uses to keep you paralyzed. You start measuring your life by what you've preserved, not what you've experienced. You protect your image, your comfort, your pride, but you lose momentum, you lose depth, you lose the raw, messy thrill of being alive. Fear doesn't just steal your courage, it steals your aliveness. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." That is the real cost of fear. Not just missed actions, but a missed existence. The kind of presence that only comes from doing the things that make your pulse quicken, your stomach flutter, your mind expand. Fear will offer you a quiet life, and if you're not careful, you'll accept that offer and call it peace. But it's not peace. It's paralysis dressed in pajamas. The shift doesn't start by pretending fear isn't there. It starts the moment you admit it is, the moment you look it dead in the eye and ask, what are you actually trying to protect me from? That single question breaks the spell, because most fear isn't about real danger. It's about perceived threat, and the threat is almost always emotional. You're afraid of being rejected, of looking foolish, of being misunderstood. But none of those things will actually break you. What breaks people is the quiet ache of a life unlived, the weight of wondering what if. That's the kind of pain fear never warns you about. It doesn't tell you that avoiding failure also means avoiding growth, that protecting your image might mean sacrificing your authenticity, that by trying to avoid disappointment, you end up disappointing yourself, slowly, silently, and repeatedly. Fear isn't the villain. It's not even the enemy. It's a messenger, and when you stop running from it, when you actually listen, it often has something useful to say. But listening doesn't mean obeying. It means understanding. There's a difference. You can feel fear and still choose to move. You can carry it with you without letting it lead. Epictetus, the slave who became a master, said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And fear, when left unchecked, becomes the master. It writes the script. It decides the limits. And the longer it runs the show, the more you believe that this is just how life is supposed to feel. Heavy, careful, tense. But it's not. That's just what happens when your default setting becomes avoidance. You don't need to erase fear. You need to change your relationship with it. You need to recognize when it's speaking and learn to separate its voice from your own. You are not the fear. You are the one hearing it. That space between the voice and the action, that's where your power lives. It's the space that allows you to observe, to pause, to choose. And that space expands the moment you stop labeling fear as weakness and start seeing it as a teacher. Because every fear, no matter how loud or subtle, points to something important, something you care about, something you haven't yet healed, or something you're meant to step into. Growth will always feel like fear at first. That's how you know you're on the edge of something real. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what happens when you act in spite of it. And no, it won't feel good immediately. It might feel terrifying. But underneath that discomfort is energy, motion, possibility. You'll never outrun fear, but you can stop running from it. You can turn and face it. And when you do, it often becomes smaller than you imagined, less powerful, less permanent. And more often than not, you'll realize the thing you were afraid of was never actually real. It was a projection, a story, a shadow cast on a wall. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." That's what fear does when you deny it. But when you stop resisting, when you meet it with presence and ask what it's trying to teach you, you reclaim your strength. You stop living under its rule. You begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time, movement. And from that movement, momentum. That's how freedom starts. Not with a massive leap, but with a quiet moment of honesty. The kind where you say, "I'm afraid, but I'm moving anyway." Because your life is too valuable to be dictated by shadows. And the only way to live fully is to stop letting fear choose for you. We've been conditioned to believe there are only two ways to deal with anger: explode or suppress. Say something you'll regret, or say nothing and regret it anyway. But both of these options keep you trapped because they both come from the same place: disconnection. Disconnection from the message inside the anger. Because that's what anger really is, a message. It doesn't come from weakness. It comes from something in you saying, "That's not okay." It's the voice of a boundary being crossed, a value being violated. But if you never slow down long enough to hear what it's trying to say, it turns into something else entirely. It becomes resentment, bitterness, passive aggression, and eventually, exhaustion. You can only carry that tension for so long before it begins to break down your body and mind. Most people walk around with silent anger. Anger they don't even realize they're carrying. The kind that started years ago, but never found its way out. It hides in the way you overreact to small things, in the way you distrust people without knowing why, in the way your chest tightens when you think about a certain person or a certain memory. And because we're never taught to examine it, we normalize it. We call it personality. I just have a short fuse. That's just how I am. But it's not who you are. It's what you haven't released. Or, even more importantly, it's what you haven't understood. Seneca, the Stoic playwright and advisor to an emperor, wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." That's the tragedy. The damage anger causes when it goes unchecked is usually worse than what caused the anger in the first place. Not because anger is bad, but because it's powerful. And anything powerful that isn't understood becomes dangerous. You don't need to fear your anger. You need to get curious about it. You need to ask, what part of me is hurt? What expectation was violated? What fear is hiding underneath this fire? Because anger, at its core, is pain that hasn't found a voice. It's vulnerability that's armored itself for survival. But armor doesn't just protect, it isolates. And when you live armored, you can't connect, not even to yourself. So what does it look like to deal with anger differently? It looks like pausing. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to hold the fire without throwing it. It looks like letting the feeling rise without letting it rule. It means not sending that message, not raising your voice, not reacting until you've asked the deeper questions. And sometimes it means sitting in the discomfort until the story becomes clear. Anger always has a story, and when you hear it fully, it often turns into something else. Clarity, sadness, grief, even compassion. That doesn't mean you excuse what happened. It means you stop letting it live rent-free in your body. There's a kind of quiet power in the person who feels deeply but responds wisely. The kind of person who can walk away instead of explode, who can express truth without cruelty, who can hold tension without passing it on to others. That's not weakness, that's mastery. And it's built moment by moment, breath by breath, in the pause between trigger and reaction. That pause is everything. It's the space where choice is born, the space where you stop being a slave to emotion and start becoming a leader of it. Carl Jung also said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's the invitation anger gives us, not just to blame, but to see. To look inward, to uncover the part of us that still hurts, that still longs, that still remembers. The more honest you are about that part, the less power anger has to control you, and the more power you have to respond with depth, not just impulse. You won't always get it right. Sometimes the fire will still win. But each time you pause instead of explode, each time you question instead of assume, each time you choose understanding over reaction, you build something rare, emotional discipline, and with it, a different kind of freedom. The kind that doesn't require the world to behave in order for you to be at peace. The kind that allows you to feel the flame without being consumed by it. Anxiety is quiet, but it is persuasive. It doesn't scream, it whispers, just loud enough to make you doubt yourself. It pretends to help, offering you a sense of control. It wraps itself in logic, in caution, in responsibility. It says things like, just think it through one more time, or prepare for the worst, just in case. And it sounds like you. That's what makes it so powerful. It doesn't feel like a foreign voice. It feels like reason. But underneath that steady voice is a current of fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of judgment, fear of falling apart. Anxiety convinces you that by obsessing over every possibility you're staying ahead, but really you're running in circles, exhausting yourself, rehearsing pain that doesn't exist. It starts small, a forgotten task, a strange look from someone, an upcoming deadline, and before you realize it, your heart rate has climbed, your mind is buzzing, and you're miles away from the present. You play out imaginary conversations, anticipate failures, catastrophize the future, all while the real moment, the one you're actually in, passes by unnoticed. You're not solving anything, you're bracing. For what, exactly? Something vague, something terrible, something you can't define, but you can definitely feel. And because you can feel it, you assume it's real. But that's the trap. Feelings are not facts. They are experiences, not evidence. And anxiety is one of the most convincing feelings we have. This moment is what anxiety steals from you. It takes your presence, it takes your clarity, it takes your sense of agency. And the worst part is you let it, thinking it's protecting you. But it's not. It's tricking you into living as if every thought deserves attention, as if every worry is a warning. But most aren't. Most are echoes, old patterns, familiar fears, thoughts you've had so many times they feel like truth. But if you looked at them closely, you'd realize they're just that, thoughts, not predictions, not commands, just mental noise with good acting. You don't have to argue with every anxious thought. You don't need to dismantle every possibility. You just need to come back to the thing in front of you, to the sound of your breath, to the ground beneath your feet, to the task at hand. That's how you reclaim peace, not by fixing the future, but by anchoring in the now. Because now is where your life is actually happening. Now is where your power lives. And the more often you return to it, the more you weaken anxiety's grip. Anxiety wants you to believe that the more you think, the more you're prepared. But the truth is, the more you think, the more you delay living. The mind is a beautiful servant, but a dangerous master. And when you let anxiety lead, it doesn't guide you forward. It traps you in a loop. You end up reliving the same fears in 1,000 variations, none of which bring clarity or peace. Peace doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from learning to live without needing all the answers. From learning to trust that you can handle whatever comes, when it comes. That trust isn't built in your head. It's built through experience, through walking into the unknown and realizing it didn't destroy you, through facing discomfort and surviving it, through living through things you once feared and realizing you're still standing. Aristotle said, "Courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees the others." And courage in the face of anxiety isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act anyway. It's showing up for your life, even when your mind tells you to stay hidden. You don't owe your anxiety every moment of your day. You don't have to answer every what if. You don't have to fix every possible outcome. Sometimes you just have to breathe, to be here, to let the thought pass. And it will pass if you stop feeding it your attention. The more you anchor in the present, the quieter anxiety becomes. Not because it disappears, but because you're no longer giving it the final say. And that's all it ever needed to lose its power, your permission. So take it back, return to now, and let the rest unfold in its own time. You are not your emotions. This simple truth can change everything. But it's not something we learn easily. We've all been there, caught in the wave of shame, the rush of fear, the heat of anger. Each feeling seems so intense, so all-consuming, that it's easy to believe they define us. The shame after a mistake, it makes you feel like you've failed at being a good person. The fear, before taking a chance, it whispers that danger is lurking, that you're on the brink of disaster. The anger, it tells you that someone has wronged you, that you need to fight back. And suddenly, these emotions don't just pass through us, they become us. We start to believe that if we feel angry, then we are angry. If we feel anxious, we are anxious. We think the feeling is a command, not a signal. But emotions are not facts. They are indicators. They point to something deeper, something that's happening inside of you. But when we treat them as truths rather than messengers, we allow them to control our actions, shape our choices, and determine our worth. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be happy, to feel good, to get rid of negative emotions. But what if the goal isn't to avoid emotions? What if the goal is to learn how to live with them without letting them define us? What if feeling sadness, anxiety, or anger is not a weakness, but a signal that we're alive, that we care, that we're human? These emotions are natural. We don't need to suppress them, but we do need to understand them. If you've ever been caught in a storm of emotion, you're not weak, you're human. You are experiencing the full range of what it means to be alive. And that's not a failure, it's an invitation to grow. This doesn't mean you'll never feel sad, anxious, or angry again. It means you'll feel those things, but they won't control you. You'll learn to let them come and go, like weather patterns in the sky. They'll still be there, but they'll no longer be the force that drives your decisions. You are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. You are the one who gets to decide how to respond. That's where freedom lies. Not in a life without negative emotions, but in a life where those emotions don't control your thoughts, actions, and identity. It's easy to get lost in your emotions. It's easy to think that what you feel is who you are. But the truth is, you are so much more than that. Your emotions are a part of you, but they don't define you. They don't get to tell you what to do or who to be. You are the one who gets to decide that. And once you realize that, you stop being a victim of your emotions. You stop reacting and you start responding with clarity and intention. And that's when your life begins to change. Not because the emotions go away, but because you choose to rise above them. You're not broken because you feel anger, fear, or shame. You're human, and that's a gift. But the real power comes when you understand that those emotions are signals, not commands. When you realize that you are the sky, not the storm, you reclaim your life, you reclaim your peace, and you reclaim your power to choose how to live in the face of adversity. And that is where true strength begins. So much of our suffering comes from one illusion, the belief that if we try hard enough, we can control everything. We try to control the people around us, their reactions, their opinions. We try to control our own thoughts, pushing them down or forcing them to be what we think they should be. And we try to control the future, imagining every possible outcome so we can be prepared for what might happen next. But here's the hard truth. You can't control any of it. No matter how much effort you pour into it, there will always be things beyond your grasp. The weather, the traffic, the rude comment from a stranger, it's not yours to control. We spend so much of our energy trying to hold on to things that don't belong to us, and in doing so, we exhaust ourselves. But the Stoics, those ancient philosophers who faced wars, plagues, and the collapse of empires, they understood something crucial. Control is an illusion. And once you realize that, you can stop wasting energy on things you can't change and instead pour that energy where it truly matters, into the things you can control. The Stoics didn't seek control, they sought clarity. They understood that the only thing in life truly within their control was their own responses, their own thoughts, and their own actions. What someone else says or does, not yours. How they treat you or the world around you, not yours, but how you respond to it. That's always yours. Always has been, always will be. And once you take responsibility for your own response, you gain the most powerful tool at your disposal, your mind. Because here's the thing, your power isn't in controlling the world around you, it's in how you relate to it. And this shift is so subtle, yet so profound. Once you stop trying to control the uncontrollable and focus instead on what you can actually influence, you begin to feel a freedom you've never known before. It's so easy to get lost in the illusion that we should be able to fix everything, our work, our relationships, our future. But as long as you're chasing control over things that aren't yours, you're setting yourself up for frustration and burnout. Traffic jams? They'll happen. Rude people? They'll show up no matter what you do. But your response to them? That's the one area where you have total control. That's where your power lies. The choice is yours. You can react, letting the world push you around. Or you can choose how to respond, even when everything around you feels out of control. You're not powerless. You've just been spending your power in the wrong direction. The way you respond to the world around you is where you hold your real strength. And if you continue to give that power away, to let the outside world dictate your emotions, then you'll remain trapped in a cycle of stress and frustration. But if you reclaim that power, if you turn it inward and focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, you'll begin to live differently. You'll stop being the victim of circumstances and start becoming the creator of your experience. The more you practice this, the more you begin to realize that the external world doesn't have to dictate your inner peace. You can walk through the storm and remain calm. You can face the chaos and stay grounded. When you stop trying to control everything, when you let go of the need to manage the unmanageable, you open up space for peace, for clarity, for wisdom. The key here is to stop resisting what you can't control and start focusing on what you can. And what you can control is how you choose to react. That's where your power is. That's the shift from being the victim of life's circumstances to being the architect of your own experience. When you realize this, everything changes. You stop getting caught up in the little things, the traffic, the rude comments, the inconveniences of daily life. Instead, you see them as opportunities to practice the art of response. You stop waiting for the world to give you permission to feel at peace. You stop thinking that the perfect situation, the perfect moment will arrive, and only then will you be able to relax. The truth is, there is no perfect moment. There is only now. And in this moment, you have the power to choose. When you focus on what you can control, your mind, your actions, your reactions, you start living life on your own terms. You stop letting external events dictate your happiness, and instead, you create your own peace. It's not about ignoring the difficulties, but about recognizing that you have the ability to rise above them. So stop wasting your energy on trying to control everything. Turn your focus inward. That's where your power lies. It's always been there. Now it's time to claim it. Mastery of the mind doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process built from the smallest moments, the tiniest decisions, and the subtle shifts you make in how you respond to life. We often think that to change, we need a grand, sweeping transformation. But real change happens when you begin with the smallest steps. When you stop reacting on autopilot and start engaging with your mind in a conscious, deliberate way. The truth is, you don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to solve all your problems at once. You don't even have to change your entire mindset in a single breath. What you need is to make a choice to pause instead of react, a choice to take a breath before you speak, a choice to observe your emotions rather than let them dictate your actions. Each small choice, each mindful moment builds upon the next. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And that progress begins with a decision to stop fighting your emotions and start seeing them for what they are. Fear will show up. It always does. It doesn't need permission, and it doesn't announce its arrival. It just slips in, quietly, insidiously. But when it does, you don't need to run from it. You don't need to try and outrun the feeling. Instead, listen to it. Let it speak. Ask yourself, why am I afraid? What is this fear really about? You may not have control over the fear itself, but you always have control over how you meet it. And when you choose to stop fleeing, you begin to dismantle its power. You don't need to act on every fear. Sometimes the act of acknowledging it is enough. The same goes for anger. Anger, when unexamined, can lead us to react in ways we regret. It flares up, pushing us to speak or act without thinking. But what if, instead of exploding, we simply paused? What if, before we let the anger control our words or actions, we stopped, breathed, and reflected? This shift, this simple pause, is where real transformation happens. Anger, like fear, is a signal. It's a message from within that something needs attention, but it's not an instruction to act rashly. Anger can be useful if you choose to channel it into understanding instead of explosion. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the key to breaking free from the autopilot of your thoughts and emotions. When you let your reactions run the show, you are living unconsciously. You're letting fear, anger, and anxiety drive your decisions without even realizing it. But when you make the decision to pause, to observe, to choose your response, you take back control. This is the point where you stop calling your life fate. This is the moment you reclaim your mind. The power is not in controlling every thought or emotion. It's in recognizing them as they arise and making a conscious choice about how to respond. This is where true mastery begins, not in eradicating negative emotions, but in learning how to sit with them, understand them, and choose your actions from a place of clarity, not impulse. You don't need to stop feeling fear, anger, or anxiety. You need to stop letting them dictate your life. You need to understand that emotions are not commands. They are signals. And when you learn to observe those signals without reacting immediately, you give yourself the space to make a better choice. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. It's like building a muscle. Each time you pause, you strengthen your ability to respond rather than react. Each time you choose awareness over impulse, you create a new habit. And over time, those small shifts build into lasting change. You don't have to wait for a life-changing event to start making these changes. It starts now, with the smallest moment of awareness, with one breath before you react, with one pause before you speak. That's all it takes to begin. Each small decision adds up. And as you start practicing this, you'll notice something remarkable. Your life begins to change. Not because the world around you changes, but because you begin to see it differently. You begin to engage with it consciously, instead of reacting out of habit. And that's where the power lies. Not in controlling everything that happens to you, but in controlling how you meet it. Mastery of the mind isn't about eliminating emotions or pretending that you never feel fear or anger. It's about understanding that these emotions don't define you. They don't control you. They're simply part of the human experience. And when you learn to observe them, when you learn to pause and choose your response, you step into your true power. So remember this, you don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to have all the answers. All you need to do is take the smallest step toward mastery, the smallest shift in how you respond to the world. One pause, one breath, one conscious decision. And in those moments, you'll find the power to change your life. You have the power to shape your life, not by controlling everything around you, but by choosing how you respond to it. Every moment you choose awareness over reaction, you're not just changing your actions, you're changing your destiny. This is your journey, your growth, and it starts with the smallest shift. If this resonated with you, take a moment to hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they are not their emotions. Drop a comment below. What is the one emotion you're committed to understanding better instead of just reacting to it today. And if you're ready to dive deeper into mastering your mind and living with purpose, make sure you're subscribed to Stoic Mindset Mastery. Keep growing, keep choosing, keep living with intention. The arena is yours. Now go claim it.